The Grand Duchy of Lithuania is the last pagan state in Europe, vast, powerful, and surrounded. The Teutonic Knights press from the west. Muscovy watches from the east. And from Poland comes an offer: convert to Christianity, marry Queen Jadwiga, and rule both kingdoms as one. In our timeline, Duke Jogaila accepts. He becomes Władysław II Jagiełło, founder of a dynasty that will govern Central Europe for 2 centuries. Produce kings of Poland, Bohemia, and Hungary, and build one of the most diverse political cultures the continent has ever seen. In this timeline, he doesn't. His advisors convince him that baptism is conquest wearing different clothes, that a Polish bride means a Polish crown worn by Polish interests. The parchment sits unsigned, the quill goes down, and the fork in the road closes behind him. What follows is not collapse, not immediately. It is something quieter, a slow unraveling of everything that might have been. Without the Union, Poland never assembles the combined army that defeats the Teutonic Knights at Grunwald in 1410. That battle, in our timeline one of the largest in medieval European history, simply doesn't happen. The Knights don't face their great reckoning. They consolidate. By the 1420s, in this alternate timeline, the Order has extended its territory south through Masovia and is pushing toward Silesia. There is no single conquest, no dramatic siege, just steady administrative pressure, strategic marriages, and the slow absorption of territories. Poland, fractured and now facing a Teutonic neighbor that answers to no one, begins fragmenting along noble family lines. The magnate families begin competing for the throne instead of consolidating around it. By 1440, there are 3 claimants and no clear crown. Lithuania follows a different path to the same destination. Without Christian legitimacy, Jogaila's successors struggle to hold the nobility together. By the 1440s, the eastern provinces are drifting toward Muscovy. The western edge is contested by Poland's fragments. The unified Grand Duchy begins to dissolve. In Bohemia, the Hussite reform movement, which in our timeline survived, loses its external backing. It is suppressed more completely, more quickly. The ideas it carries, about lay authority, about reform of the church, go underground rather than westward. In Hungary, without Jagiellonian kings to hold the frontier, Ottoman pressure is absorbed by a nobility too divided to coordinate a defense. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 is followed by an Ottoman advance into Hungary nearly a generation earlier than it occurred in ours. The Habsburgs, watching from the west, consolidate faster. Without a Jagiellonian bloc to balance them, the architecture of Central European power shifts. What emerges by 1500 is not the pluralist commonwealth that characterized the real 15th century. It is something colder, more consolidated. What was lost wasn't only territory, it was an experiment, one that, in our timeline, ran for 200 years before the world moved on. Historians of the real Jagiellonian era describe it as one of the most unusual political formations in European history. A state that governed Poles, Lithuanians, Ukrainians, Belarusians, Jews, Tatars, and Germans under a common crown, with a degree of religious and cultural tolerance that had almost no parallel in 15th century Europe. That wasn't accidental. It was the structural consequence of a union that needed to hold together people who had nothing else in common, and found over time that the holding together itself became the value. In this alternate history, that experiment never runs. What we're left imagining is not just a different map. It's a different idea, one that didn't get tried, didn't accumulate precedent. One duke, one unsigned document, and the most quietly consequential dynasty in Renaissance Europe disappears before it begins.